Greg, hey, it's all right. Just talk to me. You know what? This is overtime.
22 years I wore this uniform and I threw it away.
Keep in, Greg. Hours you never
I don't
worked.
even know how I let it get like this. I made up tickets like it was.
Gregory Raftery operated without meaningful oversight for years as a Massachusetts State Police trooper on the Turnpike. The audit that finally caught up with him exposed not just one corrupt cop, but an entire division.
Sorry, Greg. Keep going.
So ashamed, my family, my whole career, and for what?
He would not get the chance to walk this back. Within days of that conversation, Massachusetts State Police investigators would pull every ticket book he had ever signed for, cross-reference every carbon copy against the Registry of Motor Vehicles and the state district courts, and find a paper trail that only existed in one place. Roughly $51,000 in overtime pay. Hundreds of shifts he was paid for and never worked. 22 years in a state trooper's uniform. And a federal courtroom in Boston, in front of a judge who called the scheme extensive, sophisticated, and motivated by nothing but greed. Before we go any further, I want to ask you something. How many hours a week do you think a state trooper spends filling out paperwork that nobody actually checks? Drop your guess in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We break down exactly how these accountability failures happen every single week. And this one is going to make you look at every traffic ticket you've ever received a little differently. Gregory Raftery grew up in a working-class Irish Catholic corner of eastern Massachusetts in the 1970s. The kind of neighborhood where the fire station, the parish hall, and the VFW post sat on three corners of the same intersection. His father worked union construction, framing hospitals and college dormitories from Worcester to the South Shore. His mother kept the household books at the kitchen table with a felt-tip pen and a paper ledger she balanced to the penny. From the time Gregory could ride a bike, he understood two things about the adults around him. They worked, and they distrusted anyone who did not. He was not a spectacular student. His high school transcript in the mid-1980s described him as attentive but reserved, a boy who preferred a hockey rink to a classroom and who spent Friday nights working the concession stand at the town rec league to save for a used Chevrolet Nova. He graduated in 1988 and enrolled at a community college outside Boston, taking evening classes in criminal justice while working days as a landscaper for $8 an hour. His instructors remembered a young man who was polite, punctual, and quietly determined. One evaluation from his second year read, "Consistently prepared, works well within a structured environment, would benefit from a career built around procedure and hierarchy." He applied to the Massachusetts State Police Academy at New Braintree in the spring of 1996, at the age of 24. He passed the written examination on his first attempt. He passed the physical on his second. He entered the 21st Recruit Training Troop in the fall of that same year, one of just over 100 cadets who reported to a former state school building in the middle of a farm town in Worcester County. The academy was, by design, brutal. 21 weeks of paramilitary discipline, 4 in the morning wake-ups, uniform inspections that could be failed for a single loose thread, and instructors who ran cadets until they threw up in the grass beside the parade deck. Raftery finished in the middle third of his class. His academy file described him with language that could have been copied from any of 1,000 blue-collar sons of the region. Detail-oriented, physically capable, respectful of authority, shows the temperament for long shifts and independent patrol assignments. He graduated in the spring of 1997 and was sworn in on the parade ground in Framingham, his father in a rented Navy suit in the front row, his mother crying openly beside him. He raised his right hand and swore an oath to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. He was assigned badge number, cruiser number, and a locker in a barracks that had not been renovated since the Kennedy administration. His first field assignment was Troop A on the North Shore. He spent 3 years running radar on Route 128 and answering domestic calls in the mill towns north of Boston. He earned a reputation as quiet, thorough, and mechanically inclined. He was the trooper other troopers called when a cruiser threw a code and no one wanted to wait for the department mechanic. His performance reviews from those years used words like reliable, self-directed, and unfailingly on time. In 2001, he transferred to Troop E, the division of the Massachusetts State Police, responsible for patrolling the Massachusetts Turnpike, Interstate 90, from the New York state line to Logan Airport in Boston. Troop E was, at that time, considered one of the most desirable postings in the department. The Turnpike is a limited-access highway. There are no bar fights on the Turnpike. There are no house fires. There are just cars moving fast, and the state troopers who watch them. He married in his early 30s. He and his wife bought a modest colonial in Westwood, a suburb south of Boston with a good school system and property taxes his union pay could handle. They had children. He coached youth hockey at the local rink on Saturday mornings, standing at the boards in a maroon Westwood youth hockey jacket with a whistle around his neck and a Dunkin' cup in one hand. He organized a charity toy drive at the barracks every December. He ran in a St. Baldrick's fundraiser that shaved his head to raise money for pediatric cancer research. When federal prosecutors would eventually stand in front of a judge to argue for his imprisonment, they would acknowledge, on the record, that his record of community service and charitable work was genuine. By 2014, Gregory Raftery was 42 years old, 17 years on the job, a house, 2 kids, a good pension track, and a locker at the Weston Barracks with his last name on a strip of white label tape above the door. He was, by every external measure, exactly the kind of man the department wanted the public to see when it thought about the Massachusetts State Police. That was the year the overtime money started to change everything. The Massachusetts Turnpike carries close to 150,000 vehicles a day across its western sections, and more than double that near Boston. It is 138 miles of concrete and asphalt that runs from the New York border to the tunnels underneath the harbor. It is one of the deadliest stretches of highway in New England when the weather turns, and it is patrolled exclusively by Troop E of the Massachusetts State Police, a division of roughly 150 sworn troopers. Because the Turnpike is a federal aid highway, the U.S. Department of Transportation funds specific safety initiatives on it through grant money routed to the state. One of those initiatives had a bureaucratic name that no motorist ever heard: the Accident and Injury Reduction Effort. Inside the barracks, everyone called it AIRE, pronounced like the word air. AIRE shifts were 4-hour overtime blocks bolted onto a trooper's regular schedule. The purpose, on paper, was straightforward. A trooper would take a marked cruiser, position it in a known problem stretch, and hunt aggressive drivers. Speeders, tailgaters, lane weavers, the ones who caused the crashes that shut the pike down for 4 hours on a Tuesday afternoon. The pay was time and a half. A senior trooper working a full ARE shift could take home close to $300 for 4 hours of work. Troopers who wanted them signed up in advance on a paper roster tacked to a corkboard in the barracks. Here is the part that mattered. Prosecutors would later allege, and troopers would later confirm in interviews, that there was an unwritten expectation attached to those shifts. 8 citations per AIRE shift, minimum. 2 citations an hour, a quota that the department has denied for decades and that is, under Massachusetts law, unconstitutional to enforce. But the expectation existed. Troopers understood it. Supervisors understood it. And the citations, once written, became the primary record that the shift had happened at all. A Massachusetts traffic citation is not a single piece of paper. It is a multi-part carbon form. When a trooper writes a ticket, the top copy goes to the driver at the roadside. A second copy is filed with the local district court, where it becomes the basis for the driver's court date or their mailed payment. A third copy is routed to the Registry of Motor Vehicles, where it becomes part of the driver's permanent record. A fourth copy stays with the state police, filed in the barracks records room, cross-referenced by ticket book number and trooper badge. 4 copies, 4 independent systems, 4 separate records of the same moment on the highway. That was the design. That was the safeguard. The state police copy alone could be manufactured, but the ticket only became real when all 4 copies existed in all 4 places. Because a real ticket is not a piece of paper. It is a citizen, standing at the roadside, with a court date and a fine and a record and a signature that says a trooper watched him do something wrong. Gregory Raftery understood exactly how that safeguard worked. He also understood that no one, not the courts, not the registry, not the barracks records clerk, ever compared the 4 copies to each other. It started small, the way these things always do. In early 2015, Trooper Raftery signed up for an AIRE shift on a Sunday evening. He worked the first 2 hours. He wrote 3 citations, real ones, to real drivers, and handed the top copies out the driver's side window on the shoulder of the pike near the Framingham Service Plaza. Then, at approximately 8:45 in the evening, he got back in his cruiser and drove home. He was in his kitchen in Westwood 40 minutes later, in a sweatshirt and jeans, watching the end of the Patriots game. The next morning he came into the barracks, sat down at the report desk, and did something he had never done before. He took his ticket book. He wrote 5 additional citations, backdated to the previous evening, to 5 drivers who did not exist. He invented the license plate numbers by pulling details from citations he had written on his regular shifts earlier in the week, altering a digit here, a letter there. He invented the drivers by using placeholder names and old addresses. He filled out the state police carbon copy in full. Then he took the driver copy, the court copy, and the registry copy of each phony citation, walked them to the shredder in the corner of the report room, and destroyed them. He filed the state police copies with the barracks records clerk that same morning. 8 citations for a 4-hour AIRE shift. Exactly the number the department expected. 3 real, 5 invented. His time card, submitted that Friday, listed a full 4 hours of AIRE overtime. He was paid for all 4. Nothing happened. No supervisor questioned the ticket count. No records clerk pulled his file. No court called the barracks asking why a citation for a driver in Auburn had never generated a court date. The registry never flagged the missing plates. The system was too big, too paper-based, too compartmentalized to notice that 5 citations had been written into existence in one place and destroyed everywhere else. So he did it again. He did it the next month, and the month after that. By the middle of 2015, the pattern was set. He would sign up for AIRE shifts. He would work some, partially. He would skip others entirely. On the days he skipped, he was at home, or running errands, or picking up his kids from practice, in plain clothes, in his personal vehicle. And the next morning, or the morning after that, he would come into the barracks and manufacture the paperwork. 8 citations, sometimes 10. Real license plate fragments harvested from his legitimate stops, invented drivers, invented times. The state police copy filed with the records clerk. The other 3 copies destroyed at the shredder. By the end of 2015, he had collected several $1,000s in overtime for hours he had not worked. By the end of 2016, the total had grown to the point where his wife noticed and asked and was told by her husband that he had picked up extra shifts because the department was short-staffed on the pike. She believed him. There was no reason not to. He was careful. He never claimed a full AIRE shift on a night when he had a hockey game to coach, because the rink had cameras and parents. He never invented citations for a stretch of the pike he was not physically covering that week, because there was always a chance a supervisor might remember where he had been assigned. He kept a mental log of which invented plate numbers he had already used, so he would not reuse them. He knew, at every step, that the entire operation lived or died on one specific fact. The 4 carbon copies of a Massachusetts traffic citation were never in the ordinary course of business compared to each other. In total, prosecutors would later determine, Trooper Gregory Raftery collected approximately $51,000 in overtime pay for AIRE shifts he did not work across 2015 and 2016. The highest total of any trooper eventually charged in the scandal. Hundreds of hours, dozens of shifts. Every one of them documented by citations that had been written to no one for offenses that had not occurred on a highway he had not been standing beside. In the fall of 2017, the Massachusetts State Police leadership authorized an internal audit of Troop E's overtime records. The audit did not begin with a whistleblower. It did not begin with a wiretap or a citizen complaint. It began with a spreadsheet. A civilian analyst at department headquarters in Framingham had been asked to reconcile the number of citations Troop E was reporting against the number of citations the district courts were actually docketing. The two numbers should have been close, not identical. Some tickets are voided at the roadside. Some are dismissed before docketing, but close. The Troop E number was not close. The Troop E number was, in some months, 3 times higher than the number of citations the courts had ever seen. The analyst flagged the discrepancy. A supervisor pulled the report, and the department, quietly, began asking the question that no one had asked in 20 years. Where were the missing citations going? The answer came back in phases. The court copy of a citation numbered in the 700,000 series, filed by Trooper Raftery on a Sunday in November of 2015, had never arrived at Framingham District Court. Neither had the registry copy. Neither had the driver copy, because there was no driver. There was only the state police carbon sitting in a manila folder in the barracks records room, filled out in Raftery's handwriting, listing a plate number that, when the analyst ran it, belonged to a Toyota Camry registered to a woman in Chicopee who had been in a nursing home since 2012. The audit expanded. Analysts began pulling every AIRE citation Troop E had filed in 2015 and 2016. They cross-referenced every plate against the registry. They cross-referenced every citation number against the district courts. And a pattern that had been invisible for 2 years, buried under paperwork nobody had ever thought to reconcile, began to surface. Hundreds of citations existed inside the state police file that existed nowhere else. No court date had ever been scheduled. No fine had ever been paid. No driver had ever received a piece of paper. The plate numbers, when they matched anything at all, matched vehicles owned by people who had not been on the turnpike on the dates in question. Some plates matched cars that had been junked. One plate matched a vehicle registered to a state senator. By March of 2018, the audit had implicated 46 current and former members of Troop E, about a third of the division. And at the top of the list, with the highest dollar total of any trooper under review, was the name of a 22-year veteran from Westwood. Gregory Raftery, sitting at his kitchen table that same month, in a maroon Westwood youth hockey sweatshirt, opened an envelope from the Massachusetts State Police Division of Internal Investigations. He read it twice. He set it down. He looked at his wife, who was pouring coffee at the counter, and he did not tell her what it said. He put in his retirement papers within days. We are about to get into the federal case. The plea, the sentencing, and the moment a 22-year veteran of the Massachusetts State Police stood in front of a judge in Boston and tried to explain what he had done. If you have made it this far, you already know this channel is different. Subscribe if you agree. We do not let stories like this get buried. The retirement papers did not stop the investigation. Retirement never does. Because AIRE was federally funded, the case did not stay inside the state police. It was referred to the FBI's Boston field office and, in parallel, to the U.S. Department of Transportation Office of Inspector General. The referral moved fast. By April of 2018, federal agents had subpoenaed every AIRE citation Raftery had filed in 2015 and 2016. They had subpoenaed his time cards, his patrol logs, his cruiser mileage records, and the toll transponder data from every unmarked and marked vehicle he had ever been assigned. They had pulled his personal cell phone records and his personal EZ-Pass account. And then they did the one thing the internal audit had not been able to do at scale. They compared the 4 carbon copies. For every citation Raftery had filed during those 2 years, agents pulled the state police copy from the barracks records room. Then they went to the district court in the jurisdiction where the citation should have been docketed. They found nothing. They went to the Registry of Motor Vehicles headquarters in Quincy and searched for the corresponding driver record. They found nothing. They attempted to locate the driver named on the citation. In dozens of cases, there was no driver. The pattern was clean and complete. Real tickets, the ones he had written during his legitimate shifts, produced 4 records in 4 places. Every one of them lined up. His overtime tickets, the ones he had manufactured at the report desk on mornings after skipped shifts, produced 1 record in 1 place. The state police carbon, nothing else, anywhere. Agents interviewed the barracks records clerk. She confirmed what her filing system already showed. Raftery had personally walked his AIRE citations into the records room, filed the state police copy himself, and, on multiple occasions, been seen at the shredder in the corner. She had not thought anything of it at the time. Troopers shredded paperwork constantly, draft reports, rejected forms, miscopied carbons. There was no rule against it, and no log kept of who used the machine. Agents pulled Raftery's toll transponder records against his AIRE time cards. On dozens of shifts, he had claimed to be on the Turnpike. His personal vehicle had crossed local toll gantries in Westwood, Dedham, and Norwood, hours before his AIRE shift was scheduled to end. On several occasions, his personal vehicle had crossed a gantry in Foxborough within 20 minutes of a citation he claimed to have written at a service plaza 40 miles west. He could not have written the ticket. He was not there. He was, according to his own transponder, 35 miles away in a Toyota SUV his wife had bought in 2016. The smoking gun was not a text message. It was not a bank deposit. It was the absence of paper in 3 places where paper should have been. Because a real ticket leaves records in 3 places outside the barracks, his left records in 1, every time. By June of 2018, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Massachusetts, under then U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling, was ready to file. On June 26th, prosecutors charged Gregory Raftery by criminal information with 1 count of embezzlement from a state agency receiving federal funds under Title 18, United States Code, Section 666. The charge carried a maximum of 10 years in federal prison, 3 years of supervised release, and a $250,000 fine. He was the first trooper in the scandal to be charged. He would also be the first to plead. The confrontation that mattered did not happen on a highway. It happened in a conference room on the 8th floor of the John Joseph Moakley United States Courthouse on the Boston waterfront in the 2nd week of July 2018. Raftery arrived in a dark suit that no longer fit him quite right. His attorney, a former federal prosecutor with a corner office in the financial district, walked in beside him. Across the table sat 2 assistant U.S. attorneys from Andrew Lelling's office, a special agent from the FBI's Boston field office, and a senior investigator from the DOT Office of Inspector General. On the table between them sat a banker's box containing, in labeled folders, every fabricated citation Raftery had filed in 2015 and 2016. One of the prosecutors opened the meeting. "Mr. Raftery, we are going to go through the citations. For each one, we will show you the state police carbon we recovered from the Weston Barracks records room. We will show you the corresponding district court file, which is empty. We will show you the corresponding registry record, which does not exist. And we will show you the location data from your personal vehicle's toll transponder for the hour you claim to have written the citation. Do you understand?" Raftery understood. His attorney had already explained what was about to happen. Every citation was a separate act of embezzlement. Every fabricated ticket was, on its own, a felony. The government did not need every one of them to convict. It needed the pattern, and the pattern was already documented in the folders in front of him. He did not deny it. The agent later described his demeanor in a report. Cooperative, subdued, answered questions directly, did not attempt to justify or minimize the conduct. At one point, one of the prosecutors asked him a question that was not strictly about the citations. "Trooper Raftery, how many other troopers in your barracks were doing this?" He looked at his attorney. His attorney nodded once. He answered quietly. "I am not going to sit here and give you names, but if you are asking me whether I was the only one, the answer is no. I was not the only one." He entered his guilty plea before U.S., District Judge William G. Young in the same courthouse 2 weeks later. He was the first defendant to plead in the scandal. He would not be the last. Sentencing was set for March 26, 2019. Judge William G. Young, a Reagan appointee with 33 years on the federal bench, presided. The hearing opened at 10 in the morning. Prosecutors argued for a sentence that would send a message. The scheme, they told the court, had cost federal taxpayers approximately $51,377 in fraudulent overtime. But the real damage was not financial. AIRE existed to keep drivers alive on one of the deadliest stretches of highway in the Northeast. Every hour Raftery had billed and not worked was an hour a marked cruiser had not been on the turnpike, an hour aggressive drivers had gone unchecked, an hour the grant money had been stolen from its purpose. Prosecutors also acknowledged, on the record, what Raftery's community had shown up in court to say. The letters submitted on his behalf described a hockey coach, a charity fundraiser, a father who never missed a game. His prosecutors did not dispute any of it. They told the judge it was true, and they told the judge it did not matter. Raftery's attorney asked for probation. He described a 22-year career of honorable service ruined by a period of what he called poor judgment. He asked the court to consider the retirement Raftery had forfeited, the pension he had lost, the reputation he had destroyed. He said his client was already being punished every day by his own family, by his own name. Then Raftery stood. He delivered his statement to the court in a voice that shook and cracked. He apologized to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, to the Massachusetts State Police, to the federal government, to his fellow troopers, and to his family. He said he did not know how he had let it happen. He said he had betrayed everything he had spent his adult life trying to represent. He wept openly at the podium. Judge Young let him finish. Then Judge Young spoke. "This was not a mistake, Mr. Raftery. This was an extensive and sophisticated scheme. You created a paper trail specifically designed to defeat the safeguards of the very system you had sworn to uphold. You did it not once, not twice, but hundreds of times over a 2-year period. You did it in a program funded by federal grant money, whose entire purpose was to keep people from dying on a highway you were paid to patrol. This court finds that your conduct was motivated by nothing but greed. And this court finds that the badge you wore for 22 years makes what you did worse, not better." Young sentenced him to 90 days in federal prison, 1 year of supervised release, $51,377 in restitution. He was ordered to report to the Federal Correctional Institution in Devens, Massachusetts, on April 9th, and at his own request was assigned to serve his time in that facility. He became the first defendant to be sentenced to incarceration in the Troop E scandal. He would not be the last. In the years that followed, more than 40 additional current and former Troop E members would face criminal charges or internal discipline for versions of the same conduct. The Turnpike Patrol Division would be dissolved and reorganized. The AIRE program would be restructured. The paper citation system would be replaced gradually by an electronic ticketing platform that generated all 4 records simultaneously, in real time, with no shredder in between. Gregory Raftery served his 90 days at Devens and returned to Westwood in the summer of 2019. His pension, which he had spent 22 years accruing, was gone. His badge was gone. His name, in the Massachusetts newspapers, had become shorthand for a scandal that ultimately implicated a third of an entire division of the state's most prestigious law enforcement agency. The $51,000 was never the real story. The real story was what the audit found when it kept pulling threads. A safety program had become a culture of paid absence. A signature that was supposed to represent state authority had, quietly, over years, become a piece of paper that meant nothing at all. The fake tickets had been designed to be invisible. In the end, they became the most visible evidence that the system enforcing the rules had, in one small corner of Massachusetts, stopped following them. This case was disturbing, but the case on the right-hand side is a betrayal on an entirely different scale. Click it now.